As a Scotch-loving whiskey fanboy, it is shameful how few times I've been to the land of drams. However, I've just come back from a jam-packed whiskey weekend in the capital of Scotland, Edinburgh. But is it also the whiskey capital? From distilleries, experiences, tours, tastings, festivals and whiskey shopping, here is my rundown of visiting Edinburgh as a whiskey lover. So grab a glass and join me, Jeff Whiskey, possibly the worst travel guide on WhiskyTube, and let's crack on.
Jeff Whiskey.
Edinburgh has been on my travelling list from even before I got into whiskey, and with the first ever independent spirits festival being held in Leith, it would have been a crime not to make the trip. And of course I squeezed in as much as I could, maybe too much, but I'll be trying to cover all the drams and tips for any whiskey lovers trip to Old Reekie. Half vlog, half guide, full Jeff. And yes, this is the new setup. I'm still working out where to put everything and what works best. It certainly is a squeeze.
I'd say it's awfully cozy.
But either way, let's get started with day one. In my head, I had the grand plans of taking the Caledonian sleeper train, but at 300 quid a ticket and triple the travel time, I settled with a £40 return flight from Bristol. Duty free was meh, which to be fair, that's pretty standard now. There was a litre of Cotswold Signature, which was pretty tempting, but sadly that's only for international flights. I left my house at 3 AM, landed early and was on the tram into the centre by 7:30. Pro tip, wear decent walking shoes. Mine split on day one, and also pack light. Dragging a suitcase and rucksack through Edinburgh's alleys and stairs in the sun, it's a sweaty experience. I wandered through the Royal Mile, but sadly Royal Mile Whiskies wasn't open yet, so I headed to Edinburgh Castle. And another tip, they don't allow suitcases inside, which you only learn after queuing for about 15 minutes, so I had to kind of run, find a hostel, stash my bag for a £5, then rejoin the back of the queue. Though the castle itself was just awesome. Loads to see and do with spectacular sights all around. I know you're here for the whiskey and not Jeff tours, and fortunately they had a whiskey shop in the grounds. Pretty acceptable prices with lots of miniatures and smaller bottles, like it could really be a lot more inflated than it was. Some flashy bottles and of course Johnnie Walker, but we'll be getting to that. Also some really strong whiskey merch too, and great to see Whisky in there. I brought myself 2 bottles, both are connected as stepping stones in my whiskey journey. However, currently haven't been able to find them, so hopefully I'll find them when I'm editing this later. And to put aside the silly rumours of small hands, I got myself a full-size Dalmore, which was one of the first whiskey loves I had, and a big bottle of Glengoyne, as this was the first Scotch distillery I visited. I then decided I wasn't tired enough, so I grabbed my little suitcase and went on a 4-mile ramble, popping into a couple of shops which kind of had whiskey, but nothing exciting, more just your basic range and supermarket fodder. The actual whiskey shops didn't seem to open till later in the day, or just they closed the doors when they saw me. Then via a slick farmer's market. Has a farmer's market ever been called slick? They did have some dope sausage rolls.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
I made it to the hotel, dropped off my bags, a tactical change of clothes, and then off to Leith Theatre. And if you're visiting Edinburgh, the drams? Whiskey on the brain. But the trams are super easy. You just gotta make sure you get off at the right stop. I had the best time at the festival and tried so many exceptional independent whiskies. That's all been covered in this separate video. I tried to contain that wild ride. You can watch it after this if you want. A man on the screen's not going to tell you what to do. But I will say, when I say the word subscribe, the button lights up, I think. After that amazing show, I headed back to the hotel ready for day 2. I stayed at the Premier Inn Princes Street, which was wildly cheap at the time. It was a lot less money than staying a couple of miles out at a B&B. Luckily, I got upgraded to a Premier Plus room. Probably they knew who I was, which meant I had this awesome view of the castle to wake up to. Really recommend staying there. It's close to the tram stop and everything is all pretty walkable. Sunday was the big day. Roy from Aqvavitae was hosting an awesome tasting, going through all the whiskies he has released, including a possible future release. But before that, I had to make the most of my morning. So being the fool, I got up early and went down through the Royal Mile, through the Old Town. I popped into a whiskey and wine shop which had a strong range and had a brief chat with them before continuing the march to Holyrood Distillery. I debated doing similar to mine and Phil's London whiskey hunt, but I didn't have that New Zealand accent to soften the blur of this Englishman in a lower shirt walking around. Holyrood Distillery looked awesome from the outside. Sadly, I didn't have time for a tour and there was no one around to let me have a quick peek. If I've missed gold here and need to return, let me know. I have heard some rumblings that things aren't looking great for that distillery at the moment. A longer walk than planned, round the university and never-ending meadows. I arrived to the Belfry ready for an awesome tasting and it was just a real highlight. Loads of barfly, some old friends and certainly made some new ones. It was awesome hanging out with some great slappers too. Perfect. Roy was guiding us through the whole fly-covered range, starting with the amazing 10-year-old Loch Lomond, which still blows me away. I'm going to grab a dram at that. It is now easy access.
2 hours later.
Frustratingly, couldn't find it. I do need to organise and sort it out back there. That was followed by a couple of banging Ardnamurcans, then 2 of the later Loch Lomond releases. I was just on a high with these amazing drams. I did, however, misgrab the glass and sip that Daft Mill double single early, and it was a standout. My first experience of that distillery, and I was just super impressed by it. My scribbled down notes for it was pecans and Lurpak, Somerset, spicy silage, jam tarts covered in hay. Good stuff. You can see why it sold out. For me, the order leading up to best was the Loch Lomond 14, then the darker Ardnamurcan, then the Loch Lomond 12, back to the lighter Ardnamurcan, with the Daft Mill just behind the Loch Lomond single cask 10-year-old. That still has a super special place in my heart, just so fizzy and awesome. You can see my full review of this bottle here, but I warn you this was like peak Bell's palsy time for me, so you may want subtitles. All these drams were topped by his new release. He told us to keep it shush as it's not announced or even fully confirmed yet, but take a look at this. Get an exclusive first look here. Even Roy hasn't announced it. It was shocking to me too, but it was phenomenal. Best I've had from this very great distillery. Super exciting, right? Hopefully I don't get told off for that. There was some great chat, laughs, Roy's wonderful storytelling. It was a blast. Even some couldn't handle it. Also, the Belfry did amazing pizzas, and as you can see, I was a fan. The people were awesome, some people shared bottles, and the generosity was just so kind, especially when you're cheap like me. I had Gav's drams for a curveball blind dram with the least malt-lacky malt-lack from What Whisky, followed by Craig testing us further with another challenge, a very sherry-heavy Daft Mill, which to this day, I still don't believe it. It was just so different to the one I previously tried like half an hour before. I'm not sure if this is entertaining for you. This is literally me reading my diary of notes from a wild weekend. If you're still here at this point, I guess it's alright. Also, finally crossed off the new Longrow 100 proof. I really wanted to get a bottle of this and it was a pleasure killing off that one with whiskey butt. Really was spectacular stuff. And as the numbers dwindled, the final hardcores gathered round as we shared a wild range of Thompson Bros stuff. You cannot doubt how amazing their liquid is. I couldn't tell you the details of these, but it was just such a strong end to the night. And with the final dram being, is it Ardnamurca? Their American exclusive, which started in Scotland, went over to America and then was muled back to Scotland. The Belfry staff were awesome and we grabbed a very well needed kebab before the cabs were hailed to take us folk home. Of course that wasn't enough to end the night. Roy, slightly worrying, invited myself and the awesome Martin to his hotel. We passed the glass of Daft Mill around in the hotel lobby's strange chairs. We debriefed and chatted to the early hours before heading our separate ways. This is definitely more of a ramble than I expected. I filmed now 38 minutes. Hopefully I've included timestamps. On to day 3, a final day speed run. I was making the most of my last hours. Straight on the tram and by the skin of my teeth managed to get on the first tour at the brilliant Port of Leith Distillery. There's loads of construction out there at the moment, so don't walk the wrong way round like I did. The tour starts with a brilliant little intro of how the ideas started and the challenges and setbacks they faced. It's a giant vertical distillery similar to Mackmyra in Sweden, and it is not the tour for you if you're scared of heights. When you're at the top, you can see all the way down, and it was just such an awesome feat of engineering. A great tour, recommend a visit. For me, it ended with a fill your own little new make pump, which was this super tasty, like fruity new make, very like strawberry and estery. There's also this stunning looking bar on top, which sadly I didn't have time to go and grab a dram there. It was a real smash and dash visit before heading to my final stop, the Johnnie Walker experience. Now, this is certainly the most consumer focused whiskey experience I have been to. In truth, I was hesitant about it. I didn't want my final item to be some vapid money maker of a Diageo self pat on the back. I feel I cover that enough in the Diageo downfall video. However, the journey of flavour experience was really solid fun. Sadly, a drive home from the airport that night meant no booze for me, and I got my little white wristband before waiting for my tour to start. That was a lot of wah-wahs in that. They have this slick flavour quiz thing, which helps you decide what flavour you should go for, but that didn't really matter much. But the key word for this whole experience is slick. I won't spoil it too much. Colin, our guide, a great enthusiastic speaker. He took us round, starting with like quite a theatrical telling of the Walker story. There was an actor, treadmills, light effects and interactive screens. Followed into a blending room for the first cocktail. They have different elements to mix in with your chosen flavour, and the non-alcohol versions are brought out. I can't remember what it was, but pretty solid and refreshing. You work your way through multiple highly stylised, interactive and fancy rooms. It breaks down different parts of their blends, distillery characters, flavours and locations. A couple more cocktails or dram alternatives in another bar area, where they even had an old fashioned on the menu, which sadly I couldn't enjoy. However, they did give out a dram pack to the non-drinkers, which I think had a black label and a gold label. I've been fortunate enough to have tried them both, so I let the couple next to me have them to take away. They both were describing themselves as like non-whiskey drinkers, but said how impressed they have been and wanting to take a deeper dive into the Scotch world. And it was really great chatting with non-hardcore nerds like me and the impressions they had on it. They describe it as one of the best like alcohol experiences they've been to, and better than the Guinness one. You pass an impressive wall of bottles before the Willy Wonka doors close on you. The final stop, of course, is the gift shop. I didn't buy anything, but when I did get back, I did buy these Johnnie Walker glasses off Vinted for £1 each, so beating the system. Take that, Diageo. That's like a real footnote summary of it all. I would say it is worth a visit. Whiskey nerd or like curious casual, it is a good slice of whiskey-tainment and surprisingly solid value. Off to the airport, a duty free with a litre of teachers eyeing me up, which I couldn't buy because it was again international only. So is Edinburgh the king of the whiskey experiences? Possibly. It is a stunning place, all super easy to navigate and explore, and honestly just the best time. They have just announced that the Independent Spirit Festival is coming back in 2026, so hopefully this is a guide for all you wonderful folk going next year. A massive thanks to my awesome patrons and channel members, the Bottle Slap Club. Your support made this trip possible. I've smashed some goals this year and just done incredible stuff. If you've enjoyed, like and subscribe and all that YouTube guff. Grateful to have you here, and cheers to the next one.